I'd like to start with the letter A today. This letter A has been adulterated, it's been edited. That is not an accident. We've got two A's, fortunately. When you make them transparencies and add them onto each other, we can see that that's been put there deliberately and has been this has been extended out by a couple of degrees, 2 or 3 degrees. Now you may remember from a previous episode that we've got this cookie jar here that we can't quite work out what it's for. Now the angle of that is about 20 degrees. I mean, we can't really measure it, but it's, in that region. So let's draw a line from there up to our A notch, and then find out what angle it is and then put it back in the computer. And so we put it into the computer at precisely 21 degrees, because that's what it looked like when I drew it. I got like 21.03, but it's actually 21 dead. And as you can see, that's a crop of the image that my program creates. And straight through the bit at the bottom, 21 degrees precisely. You can't identify a fraction of a degree on a piece of paper. In order that you know that you've got the right answer, we have to be dealing with integer degrees. So next is the letter R. And with it, there's this letter B here. Now the R, almost famously, has got a break in it. There you go. Now this B is actually pretty horrible. It's got a very boxy, very rectangular upper serif, and yet at the bottom, it's all worn away apparently. No, it's not. This is a weird B, and that is a dot that we're supposed to aim for. Now, I've put this pentagram on there. Having prepared this presentation, I've now realised that it should really be the square, although it's pointing to the damaged copy. I'm very sorry, but I've managed to damage the sonnets. The particular crop that I've got the start coordinates at that. I'll go and get another one. I'm getting quite attached to that little scar, but actually, I've accidentally gone and scarred quite an important part of the page, because that or, lots of stuff is pointing to the or. This is a precisely 30-degree line. It's not coming from perfectly the right point of the B. It might look like it there, but I want it to be absolutely perfect, and we're just a little nudge to the right. But the line that you're seeing is a 30-degree line, and there's another 30-degree line there which goes to the A. This does not go through there. It's quite a different angle. This is 30 degrees, that's 18. But it does look like it goes up to the feet. That's work in progress. I'm not suggesting there's a geometry, there are triangles and stuff from that, but I am suggesting that's you're being pointed at there. And if you say, well, it's the centre, yes, I know it's the centre, but actually there's lots of centres. There's a centre here that I'd quite like, actually. Another centre here, centres all over here. That is not halfway from the top and the bottom. So there are those squares, and it may be in terms of drawing those lines that we want to use the intersection there, but it's just I'm coming to the conclusion that this is just a general area, but you're being pointed at OR, ORE. Now, there's that little freckle there, which was noticed by J. Hall Carpenter, actually. I'd been trying to ignore these, I think. Now, I don't know if that's actually supposed to be on the centre line. I think it's indicating something else. But let me have a look at this S here. Now that's this stuff here is the medium-sized pentagram that strikes through the through sonnets, and if we extend that light down, it hits that full stop, which is a bit of an excuse of a full stop. So that corroborates that that line and that pentagram. But we've also got this. Now, I've been accused of finding what I've chosen to look for. Well, I chose to look for John D. That tau cross, if you like, of when I first realised that the 9 dot at the bottom is in fact lined up, not through the eye, but through the cerise, and it's the cerise that's the kind of stuff we're aiming for. You have to get inside it. And then when we saw the O, the T is then obviously going to have the 2 diagonals of the square, of the small square that we're going to find over here. It's going to cut both of those. And then initially I drew the bar of that tau a little bit higher, which is where the centre of these squares is. I then realised that it didn't look very nice, and we actually want it to be on the sonnet strike through, so I put it there. It starts from a quarter of the way across, halfway across the small squares. This is just to the right of the centre, so I'm going to define the far side as the same distance as this left side, and that means it's going to just go off into space, but I don't care. I think that's what John D wanted. So I have managed to will this tau cross into existence. So you just have a look at that. I don't want to go through the error correction stuff again, because it's very simple, but it's obviously confused. But I'm owed 2 more pixels, and you can imagine the smogometer, just broke when J. Hall Carpenter pointed that out to me. Now we've got this mark here. I'll come to that later. That's a deliberate mark. So there we go. That is corroboration of both the sonnets pentagram horizontal, but also of my tau cross. It's mine. Right. So imprinted with that eye, the dot of that eye is a wee bit too high, and it's a little bit misshaped as well. So if we look at it, it's you've no idea what that is, but that is too high. It should be about there, maybe a little bit higher than that, but it's too high. So it just turns out that this triangle here goes straight through this whatever you call it, the dot of an eye that's too high. If you've got any other things on this page which are wrong, which you'd like me to try and have a look at and magically sort out, particularly if they're corroborated on the clone copy, which I'll show you shortly, then let me know. Right. I didn't actually show that. That appears to go straight through the neck of that strange blob. I have no idea what the blob is. Now, this had been a bit of a problem because I couldn't actually define it perfectly. You had to tell me the depth of the cerise, of the feet of these letters. Well, you don't know, because the answer is embarrassingly simple. It's root 2 minus 1 times the root of the square. Well, that actually means, in plain English, the length of the pentagram plus the length of the square equals the diagonal of the square. And that pentagram is say, drawn just by working that out, just by taking the length, and doing that, isn't it? So, like all the lines. So, right, so now we need to go through the aesthetics of this page, because it has been claimed that the reason that this page demonstrates so much geometry is because it's just been designed beautifully. So let's just see how beautifully it's been designed. That is not a hyphen. We'll do a close-up of that a little bit later. It's just a horrid splodge. They've got plenty of hyphens in that box. What is that? We've got a broken P. That's actually, whilst it might look is rather better hidden than the broken R, that is not normal. That's just a broken R. Why have we got a broken R? Then right, so the top line, okay, and then it just goes on, right? So now we've changed typeface, which is a no-no, and then we've changed font size. We've changed font size down. Right? We're in an ocean space. Right? What? We've got a printing error here. And we've got this indistinct and superfluous full stop. Do you want a full stop or not? What is that? So Sonnets up to S is centered, but he wanted to have a full stop for some reason. Maybe to tell us that that diagonal's correct, maybe for something else as well. So on to the next line, and we've dropped font size again. We're now in lowercase, which isn't particularly nice. A bit of uppercase there. And we've got the misplaced I, and we've an unnecessary stop. You don't need these stops on the ends of headlines. Right. Now we've got two blank rules. Oh my goodness, what do those mean? What do two blank rules mean? The comment section below is available for anybody that can give me a reason other than they just wanted to do it, or it's anonymous. For the next 3 centuries, that would mean it's anonymous. So, and it certainly meant that in the Jacobean era. There are other examples of it. So what does this mean? On to the next slide, and we've changed font size again. And we're now back in caps, and the LON and the N are dropped. No, the other lines aren't like that. That baseline is particularly crooked. Why is that doing that? It does accentuate the D, but I make it that at and do are raised. And on to the next line, and we've changed font size again, and strange large stop, bizarre T, another bespoke T, irregular spacing. That's a particularly bad piece of spacing, but the kerning is extremely judicious everywhere. Decorative A. What on earth is that? Right, we're virtually at the bottom of the page, and we've just decided to put, there's a word for it, isn't it? A fancy thing in there. I'm not even sure that italic font goes with, typeface goes with the regular typeface that it's next to, but it's all looking absolutely filthy at this stage. Indistinct S, and my red line is actually a little bit to the left. It should be right underneath the 6, but it's not centered. None of those above it are centered properly. They are pieces of metal. You just want the same number of bits of metal on either side. And we've got another unnecessary full stop to end. This is a typesetting catastrophe. It is the typographical equivalent of this, right? You're not supposed to look at this. You're told not to look at it, right? That's... You'll never see that hanging in an English department, and there's a good reason for that. Everybody will stop reading Shakespeare because they'll be having nightmares as their brain tries to process why is that a monster. So there are moire patterns in here. I've yet to start going through all that. Now, the British Library are of the opinion, and they have some scholarly backup, which we'll come to in a moment, that this is an imprint of this. These are actually the same. Slightly, obviously used a bit more ink or something, maybe. Let's kind of have a close look at that, and let's start with the artwork. Now, the below is the Folger high res. This is British Library's lower res. They will, at a very modest price, give me a higher res. They'll make one. But can we work out if they're the same? Well, yes, we easily can by just looking at this fat little evil-looking girl there and compare it with the angelic little one here. Quite blatantly, these are not the same. But when we get a better resolution, we'll be able to see the other imperfections. He shaded that. That's not shaded. But anyway, right. I'd like to just go through the geometry on here because he's. This is a clone, so we're expected to find quite a bit of the geometry. Now, you can't put the red square. If you put the red square on the rule, on the lower anonymous rule, I don't know if I've mentioned it to you, it meant anonymous for 300 years. You don't need the cryptography. It's pretty plain, unless you count this as cryptographic. I guess technically it is. If we do that at the moment, then things go rapidly wrong. So let's play fair. That's the best square that you're going to get, and it's essentially defined such that that happens. And this font typeface is. Has golden triangles. It's the same one as the same design as the one on the original, so that line down there will work as well. Now, rather interestingly, it's not surprising that the proportions of the artwork are correct, but he's got the leading exactly right and the font size, and hence and has also placed the S's underneath the celery. That's the right stick of celery. I call these sticks of celery. Is nothing like the other one. So that's another. No way are these the same engraving. So the line there. I mean, this triangle by me is defined as 51 degrees, but you don't use in the middle of the S. It goes straight through the eyes of the rabbit. So he's got that leading right, now this triangle, because he's not noticed that it's centered. The Sonnets is centered on the S's, and the full stop. You'll just have to hang it over the edge. He's put the full stop in, and his own design instinct is, well, we have to center on that now. That's on the page. So these are screwed up, but there is something a little bit weird because we've gone through both of the ends of the S's, and not only that, but the ends of the S's are actually where the pentagram that fits in. I've deleted that triangle. There's the triangle, the small triangles on the top. It's just almost intersects them. Strange. There we go. More of the geometry. Now it then cracks up, and you may be able to find a square somewhere else, but you're not going to find one quite like that, because that's not. We need to be pixel perfect in the middle of that eye, but you can be on the baseline. It won't look as nice. It'd be nice if you can match the baselines. We're matching the strike throughs, it's interesting what he's been able to do. There is obviously always going to be a pentagram there going, but we need to find relationships where, for instance, these two baselines are related by phi squared or phi plus 1. That's not it. And good luck if you want to find it. If you're looking for this in another page that doesn't have this geometry already waiting to be lined up, all you need to do is find three three-sided regular polygons, 3 4-sided regular polygons, and 3 5-sided regular polygons. And then the only other thing you need to do is make sure that they can all be expressed in terms of each other. They all have to be part of the same geometry. No problem at all. Off you pop. Now, I just want to go through each of the features on this page that John Wright has cloned. And the first is the hyphen. He hasn't put a hyphen in there. He's put another of these strange things. Now, yeah, I realise this isn't in focus, but it'll do for now. And because we can see that whilst he's put a blodge, his blodge is fatter on this side than it is on the other. So he's made a blodge, but it's not the same. P, again, the letters that John Wright is using, the characters are actually, they look sort of much better than the 1609 ones, but they're not the same. You see that part of the P is nowhere near the same as that. This R is more obvious. It's it has to be. If we're going to say it's an imprint, that's just roughly the same. It's roughly not the same. So I'm looking forward to the high res. What is that there? What's that line inside there? I don't know if these. Well, I can't believe that he's created all of these letters. But there we go. This is now becoming highly suspicious, incidentally. Right, now the S's. So that one's obviously a bit indistinct. It looks like that one's more so. That has got something on there. Yeah, okay, it's not very good. We'll get a better one. On here, we definitely have got two little scribbly things. And interestingly, this one goes zigzag, and that one goes zig. So if anybody from the land of the scholarly would like to interpret that, but they are quite deliberate. That's a stick with some zigzag stuff on it. Have you got any iconography to go with that? Now the N, this is the first N in Sonnets. On the Astley version, we've got something that's fallen off the Christmas tree, or maybe the end of my curtain rail. We think it's a dot on the end of a line, signifying a terminator, as may the freckle upstairs do. But we're not. It's just a horizontal line to nowhere. We can't really work out just yet what it means. But the point is that John Wright has put a circly thing there, because he thinks, well, it's part of the code. The put in signs. So he doesn't know what that means, but he's plonked it on there. Now at London, he's not measured that perfectly, because he's got the. I believe it's the well. If you measure it, the long and the N are actually below. It's difficult to look at these things without getting out, a graphics package and just measuring them. So he just got on for some reason down there, but he wanted to accentuate the D. But there's something interesting here. We're going a blob here and a blob here. We need to get a better resolution. Now here we do have a blob, and we can even see the outer line of that circle. Right, that is a target, and we've got a construction line that goes straight through it, thus corroborating the Aleph Tav stuff. Right, so we appear to have that on there. We need the high res, but we also appear to have one. He's put one on that N, and of course, when you look at this N, it's this side of it. It should be much thinner, and it should have a cerise like that. But it's right next to it, so no problem looking at that. I'd not included that. It may just be cryptographic. It may not be geometric, but it's worth. And I now have to examine that point to essentially see whether or not 18, 30, 36 go through that, because that's essentially all we're playing with here. There are very few angles. They're all quite regular. That 21 degree angle up to Kepler is unique. There are two uniques. We've got 51 degrees to the pyramid. Everything else is either 18, 30 or 36 degrees. So this B, this B has these two things on it. So we've got, I pointed out that square, and I pointed out that we've got that blodgy thing on the bottom. This B looks much nicer. I'm looking forward to a high resolution of that. This B is a bit of a mess, and I think it's been entirely crafted. Now the G, big capital G, his has got cerise on. This is not the same imprint. I can't tell whether or not this has been shaved down, but we've got our cookie jar here. I'm not expecting it to be. I'm expecting it to be round. He hasn't manicured any of these stops. And then we've got the T's, and he's replicated those. They're obviously different. We've got our Dad's Army arrow here that's pointing straight at that fancy A. What on earth is that fancy A doing on Aspley? What on earth could it be doing in such an inappropriate place on the page? What does this mean? Well, it means the Churchcoach edition is a clone. It is not an edit of the original printer's form. That's just unarguable. Wright understood that there were cryptographic signatures in the original. He attempted to replicate at least 10 of them, and possibly several more that we are now debating. He did not understand them. They did not possess the detail of the original, nor the geometry. He knows that they do things like this, and he knows that he's going to put them in. The printing errors in the original version, published in 1609, were, in the opinion of John Wright, deliberate. And they're not just been put in there by accident, and this is not the same imprint. This has been completely different. So allow me to introduce you to Solomon Lazarus. Call me Sidney Lee. Went to Balliol and edited the Dictionary of National Biography for 20 odd years over the turn of the 19th to 20th century. He was also a very notable Shakespearean, and to this day is regularly quoted as to what Sidney Lee, forensic historian, has decided. So let's now. I would imagine, he gave many Shakespearean lectures. I would imagine if you were able to ask Sidney who he thought was the most important person in English history, he would tell you it's William Shakespeare. Right? That's what he'd say. Right? So let's see what this most revered historian has got to say about what we've just seen. The booksellers arranged that one half of the copies should bear one of their names in the imprint, and the other half should bear the other's name. The even distribution of the two names on the extant copies suggests that the edition was precisely halved between the two. The practice was not uncommon. Every word of that is utter rubbish, including that last bit. I'd like some scholarly comeback on that. If anybody is aware of anybody taking a printer's form and mucking around with it and putting a different publisher on the bottom, as opposed to Sidney just doing a rip-off, which is, if you've seen this anywhere else, that's what it is. Nobody does that. You put William Aspley and John Wright on the bottom, and then you bang out the copies. Right, the amount of mucking around to do what you think is just mad, and the whole of Shakespeare is just absolutely mad. Everything that you say, mate, complete rubbish. We cannot rely on anything that you say. Right? So that is just to remind me to nip off quickly into spreadsheet land. Now, I appreciate that this isn't really going to float anybody's boat. Patronising about it, but this is a spreadsheet that now replaces the computer program, and it sees, having a good think as things bubble around. Now, the point is here that whilst it's bubbling around, everything is defined from. We need two sets of points. I'm not going to go into the error correction. It's rather beautiful, actually. It works perfectly. The lower rule has to be redefined. The only other thing that we put in are 21 and 51. Right? The angle of a very large building in Egypt is 51 degrees, and the rounded down to an integer that we can then measure. The angle of Kepler's supernova was, I think you can still read it with an X-ray machine or something, rounded down is 21, and that's it. All the other numbers in there, started bubbling around because they were being cooked up and iteratively from all this other stuff in here. And what I was intending on doing is for you to have a set of images on the bottom showing you everything and everything put together and what have you, and anything that you might want to see. Unfortunately, the API for Google Draw doesn't exist. Well, it exists, but they haven't published it for various possible reasons, which is very sad because then you have to output this stuff into GIMP and then load it up. So that's that. But that's extremely useful. And I'm still manicuring that. So if you want any further explanation for that, now this is just a spreadsheet that I've made up where I've been able to put each of the individual rebuses on their own sheet, right? And then I can join them together. I can make one called Burial, which has just got that part of the story in, so that I can describe that. Now, for the benefit of anybody just coming in, all I'm doing is collating other people's work. I'm not up to any of this. Although that said, I did have a suggestion for John and the corroboration of one of his own crosses of Anjou. Now, just zoom across here. Where did it go? Here we go. Just Anjou. So yeah, I'm suggesting that you have 4 characters here for each of those, just like that via here. We've only got 2 crosses of Anjou on here. We'll need a third. I thought John had mentioned a third. If anybody knows where that is and has got a description of it, I'd appreciate it in order that I could put together the what will actually be the real presentation. So let's just go back to this, and yeah, if you want further description on those, by all means. But yeah, I don't want to be rude. Here's Wolf Freeman, Godfather of Cryptography, one of the most important people in the history of 20th century cryptography, certainly as far as the United States are concerned. Now, he very famously attempted to find Baconian ciphers in the first folio, and he didn't find them because they're not there. So the poor guy is looking for the wrong kind of stuff about the wrong guy in the wrong place using completely inappropriate techniques. It's not a cipher. Wolf's business was finding ciphers, was finding a mechanism from which you could go and get, some kind of life story of Shakespeare or of Bacon or something out of that. That's not what we have. But he's being misquoted, or his words are being used without context, and that's not on. Look, English literature, your comments are most welcome, and the comment section is below, and negative and derogatory comments are indeed most welcome. All I say on that is that this is a public forum that you're on, and I'm perfectly entitled to use your comments as evidence. So before you say something really silly, you might want to give it some thought. But it's okay if you want to say silly things. That's fine. Now, this particular group on Reddit's got 56,000 people in it. Now, they're not all super brains, but there are quite a few thousand people in here who've got IQs off the Richter scale, there'll be several thousand mathematicians, professional mathematicians in here. I need to get my story real good, so it'll be quite a while yet. I'd like to go through the numbering and some of the other cryptography in the work proper, as I believe, without any evidence, that it's the third of 3 cryptographic masterpieces. But anyway, more news as we get it. See you later.